What's going on, Lion fans? Welcome to the Pride Detroit YouTube channel. I'm Miko, and joined today, Jeremy Reisman is here once again to talk about Lions OTAs and some of the observations that he's had. Morgan is actually taking a much-needed vacation, possibly coming back, maybe even a little more tan than I am, just, since he's going somewhere nice and warm and sunny, I'm expecting. So we won't have Morgan, this week and probably for a couple videos going forward. But again, Morgan by far deserves this vacation based off of like the type of work he puts in. So I'm glad that he's getting some time away.
Agreed. He's a bit of a workaholic, both here at the site and what he does outside of his job here. So I hope he's taking the time to actually enjoy it and not think about other things.
Well, the fact that I saw that he was taking like books related to football, I was like, okay, like I guess it's a vacation, but like Morgan is forever trying to expand his football knowledge. So I greatly appreciate it. Obviously, like you said, we both appreciate what he does, both for the website and even for, over here on the YouTube channel. But with that said, Jeremy, let's jump into OTAs. It was another week where you got an opportunity to kind of get eyes on the team and just some of the things that they've been working on, obviously ramping up, eventually getting to training camp. It's like late July, early August type of timeline for training camp.
Yep. That's when we should expect. I don't have any behind the scenes information yet, but usually we get an announcement, I think, in mid-June-ish of when when that's gonna happen. But yeah, basically mid-June to late July is the beat writers' time off, the players' time off. But yeah, we still got a couple practices before then to talk about.
Okay. And that's exciting because again, I think, if people haven't had a chance, you've already have your written observations up on the website. But I did want to get a chance to just pick your brain on a couple things because based off of the observation that we got from you last week, there were a couple players out with injuries. And this week we saw a couple of those players come back and actually get on the field. One of those players being on the defensive side of the football and Terrion Arnold.
Yep.
Obviously people are absolutely chomping at the bit to figure out how Terrion is doing first and foremost in practice. But I'm also curious, from what you've been able to see of him in this limited capacity, how do you think he stacks up in comparison to some of the other, high draft picks that the Lions have taken in the first round?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And obviously it's early and I think everyone is entering this conversation knowing that whatever I say now is not, okay, Terion Arnold is better than Aiden Hutchinson or better, worse than this guy. I've seen him for 3 practices if you include rookie minicamp, so I'm not going to jump to any far conclusions yet. But yeah, the first OTA he was limited, basically just doing individual. On Thursday, he was able to basically be a full participant in practice, and because Carlton Davis was out, he was basically the number 1 corner all day, and you could barely tell a difference. And again, this is one practice. I'm not trying to hype up Terion Arnold to the point where he's already a number 1 corner. No, of course he's not that yet. But he gets the interception that everyone writes about, and it was a really good play. It was probably a forced throw from Jared Goff, but he was holding onto the ball for a while. There wasn't an open receiver, so he tried to force something in to JMO, and Terrion Arnold had sticky coverage. He saw the pass coming, jumped in front of it, made a really good play on the ball. And so, it's tough to compare him to other positions that, where they were in terms of this early in the process. But the fact that now he's playing with starters and looking the part is huge. And, when you talk about some of the big offensive plays that happened, I don't remember any of them over the past 2 or 3 practices coming at the hands of Terrion Arnold. That doesn't mean it hasn't happened. Doesn't mean, he's played every play perfectly, but it does seem like when the first team is making their heyday through the passing game, I hate to do it to him because the way his season ended last year, but Kindle Vildor is the guy that they've been targeting and seen the most success against. And, that you can take that news however way you want to, but I think that the positive spin on it is certainly there's nothing available where Terrion Arnold is, so they're looking to Kindle Vildor's way, and so it's been a promising start, no doubt, for Terrion.
And I think that's really encouraging, obviously, for Lions fans, because again, while it is a little disappointing to hear that Kindle Vildor is still the punching bag in the secondary as of right now, to know that it's not the other way around, that it's not just pick on the rookie because he's making all of these mistakes.
Right.
It kind of goes to show that some of the things that we were hearing about him in the draft process, about, again, him being one of those, being a really smart player, being able to have all the physical tools, at least that in the early stages of these offseason workouts, it seems to be translating to the field.
Yeah, no question. And obviously things change a little bit when the pads go on. I would say of all the positions, you can maybe judge more based on like corner and wide receiver play this early, but things get
Mm-hmm.
a lot more physical too. But when you look at a guy like Terrion Arnold's play, that might play to his strengths more than his
Yeah.
weaknesses, right? Like he's a guy that is going to be even more physical when the pads are on. And Amika Robertson is another guy that I'm really excited to see once the pad's on, because again, like he's flashing some solid play right now, but I know once the pad comes on, he's going to take that play, that aggression, that, just that competitive nature to a new level. And the same goes with Terrion, obviously.
I want to stick to the secondary with this next question here, because you kind of just brought up Amik Robertson, and obviously from what we've heard, he's been, shadowing here and there at the nickel spot. We've heard that Ennis Rakestraw Jr. has been shadowing at the nickel spot. And we've also heard, obviously, that Brian Branch hasn't been participating as of right now because he's, still recovering from his injury. But that offers a huge opportunity to Ifeatu Melifonwu to get more reps at safety. Kind of like looking ahead, do you see this as an opportunity for Iffy to kind of like get a little bit ahead of a little bit ahead in this race of possibly holding off Brian Branch to kind of solidify himself as a starting caliber safety?
It's a good question. I would say so. Yeah, and certainly an opportunity. My question is just like we still obviously don't know the complete plan here, right? Because I do think they value Ifeatu Melifonwu, but we don't want to jump to conclusions with him either. Like we're all very excited with how he played down the stretch, right? He played 6-7 games and was a game changer. Like there's no doubt about it. He's sacking quarterbacks. He's intercepting the ball. He's playing very aggressive. Everything what this defense is supposed to be about. If he was doing that down the stretch, and it won them the division, it won them other games as well. It made them competitive in that Dallas game where he got a pick. And so I don't think there's any doubt that if he is going to play a big part in the defense this year, I think the question is really what level that is when you have a healthy Brian Branch. I don't think Brian Branch is going to be a starter at safety. I do still believe his primary spot is going to be at nickel, but the question is like, yeah, the lines were very upfront saying like we want him to play more safety too. So what does that look like? Is that only when they're playing in 3 safety sets? They're going into dime packages, or is that when we is it matchup based, right? Like, do they like Brian Branch against this certain tight end? Do they like Amik Robertson versus tight end? Who they like better in these one-on-one matchups? I think that might dictate a lot of what they do. But in the meantime, yeah, like if he's the best safety out there, and it's not even close because you don't, not only do you not have Brian Branch out there, you don't have Kirby Joseph out there. And so, this is absolutely an opportunity for him. And I guess the opportunity really is to prove that everything that he finished the season with last year was not just a fluke, not just a, no one's got tape on this guy yet type of thing. He's got to go out there and do it consistently to get this team's trust. And, I wouldn't say there's anything that he's done so far this OTA session that would make me believe that anything last year was a fluke.
And that's like, again, for me, someone who's been like really rooting for Iffy in that regard, because I do think, just like you were saying, he is such a game changer when he's on the field. And it's not necessarily I don't want the Lions to limit Brian Branch in any capacity, because I think he is absolutely that talented. Like he can be an all-pro player at safety. He could be an all-pro player at nickel, but we've also heard this team talk about in the past how they want to have more playmakers on the field. And when I look at Iffy, it's like, well, that's one of your prime, playmakers on the defensive side. So definitely kind of rooting for him to continue to get these opportunities and seize those opportunities to be able to be on the field.
No question.
Another player that I did want to talk about, you mentioned him briefly in your article, is Josh Pascal. And Josh is someone who, obviously the Lions drafted him a couple years ago in the second round. He dealt with some injuries his rookie year, but made a couple plays here and there. And there were a lot of people that were expecting him to kind of take off last season, and it didn't quite manifest that way. But you did make a point to highlight that when it came down to, again, having that defensive line set up, it was more than likely him opposite Aiden Hutchinson. Does it feel like to you, from what you've seen in these, again, couple limited practices, that Josh could be ready and priming himself to make a Derek Barnes type jump this year, where, a guy that a lot was expected of Derek Barnes those first couple years, and it didn't take until his third year for him to really kind of ascend?
Yeah, I mean, that's always the hope, right? If your rookie player hasn't, or your draft pick hasn't really broken out in the first 2 years, it's you hope that there's a year 3 breakout, and that's kind of been the pattern so far, right? Like It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't obviously just Derek Barnes, but a couple guys from that first draft class really kind of took flight in year 3. And so you hope that that's the case. It's certainly not always the case. Sometimes when a player just doesn't play well in his first 2 years, that means he's not as good of a player as you thought he might be. But you look at Pascal's career here, and it's been marred by injury pretty much since he landed. Obviously, he was dealing with the was the sports hernia stuff, I think, is his first
It
year.
was a sports hernia the first year. Yep.
And then I think it was kind of a smattering of things last year. And so I mean, now he's getting a lot of first team reps, so the opportunity there, just like Iffy, is like, make the most of it right now. You're being under the spotlight. But that edge position is to me is going to be really, really fascinating, because there are a lot of guys to me that could compete for that spot. But again, like, there's no Marcus Davenport right now. There's no James Houston right now. Matthew Betts is new to the team, and so while he's getting a good amount of reps with the second and third teams, I don't think he's yet in the conversation for starter. To me, it's just, this is a good opportunity for Pascal to, it's not a matter of whether this year he's going to break out or not. It's now that he's having these opportunities, getting these reps. And again, it's no pads. Offensive line play is not very important. Or at least, to me right now, it's all about the mentals. And so the physical work that he's putting in isn't important as the physical work he's going to be putting in 2 months when it's training camp. But the point is, right now he's there with the starters. He should be learning stuff from the guys next to him. He should be learning things off Terrell Williams, a new defensive line coach. And that could be another factor of whether he makes a year 3 jump, right? Like, Terrell Williams, they've been talking this guy up all offseason, and the proof is in the pudding with what he did at Tennessee. I mean, you ask anyone within that Titans organization, or anyone that even covered that Titans organization, what they think of Terrell Williams. And he's a guy that develops players that are young, and he's a guy that gets the most out of veteran players who already know the game pretty well. So I think things are set up right now well for Josh Pascal to make that year 3 jump, but it's never guaranteed with players. They have to put the work in, and we know Josh Pascal is a high character person, but sometimes it just all doesn't come together. So it's a wait and see things. I can't say that, like, oh, I've noticed this in practice, and it certainly looks like he's ready to break out. All I can tell you is that the opportunity is right there right now, and there are quote unquote excuses for maybe not breaking out in the first 2 seasons and waiting until this year to potentially do it.
Yeah, and I think that's important to kind of keep in mind. I mean, I ask that because I think, again, Josh is one of those people that you've seen enough flashes for him. It's not necessarily like the Levi situation where, like, Levi was barely on the field and all we literally had was like a handful of plays his rookie year, and then we didn't see much of him his sophomore year. Like, Josh has been more so, yes, he's had injuries, but then it's like you've seen the flashes, in a certain number of games where you're just like, man, like, if he can put it all together, maybe he can actually be that edge opposite Aiden that can really, have that really strong 1-2 punch. Which is why I really like the fact that you brought up Terrell Williams, because I think there's going to be people that look at Terrell Williams coming in and they're like, oh, Aiden's going to benefit the most from him, or Aleem's going to benefit the most from him. And I more so look at it like, I'm looking to see how Pascal and Broderick Martin, like some of the guys that are kind of on that second tier, like how much growth happens with those kind of players.
Yeah, no question. And Broderick Martin, we talked to him after practice, and he talked about Terrell Williams and how, he's already learning stuff from him. And, it certainly seems like he feels a certain amount of growth already, just being in the building with him for essentially a month or so. So it's a huge factor. Those positional coaches, I don't think I'm saying anything new necessarily, but I think it's an underrated part of this entire regime is they tend to get these very, very well-respected guys. And yes, they're losing guys. Yes, they're not, 100% hit rate on some of these guys, but they're also like not, they don't mess around if it's not a fit, right? We've seen a couple of guys, particularly on the defensive side, where it's like, okay, it's not working. Well, let's go find someone who does work. And the fact that they've been able to replace some really talented coaches that have found success both here and elsewhere with other talented coaches is something that I think has paid dividends. I mean, when you're a young team like the Lions that have seen as much success as they have early on, speaks to the development skills of this coaching staff. And I think Terrell Williams is going to be another one of those guys.
I completely agree. And another one of those coaches that has had a really good impact, at least I believe that he had a really strong impact on the running backs last year, is Scotty Montgomery. And obviously, he's someone that is getting a lot of opportunities in the NFL, but when you look at his work with the running back group, he's got a bit of a project on his hands this year in Sione Vaki, somebody that got to play running back sparingly, at Utah and is now coming in the NFL and is going to be more so dedicated to that role. I've been very adamant, and I don't think I've ever had such a strong take that, like, I think Craig Reynolds might be in trouble when it comes down to what Sione Vaki could bring to this team. Is there anything that has given you any type of indication that, like, either whether it's something that Vaki's doing on the field or even how the coaches are talking about him that could give you that same type of sense that, like, you know what, they do have a really good, strong feeling about him?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot, right? There's the fact that they traded up to get Vaki. I thought, one of the most fascinating things we heard on Thursday was from Scotty Montgomery and talking about the personal face-to-face, visits that they had with Sione Vaki. The first one, I presume, to be at the combine because there was a formal interview with the Lions there. Scotty Montgomery's just like throwing all of this terminology, all this stuff about how they use running backs and where they need to go. And Vaki's being straight up with him, like, I'm learning all this stuff for the first time, right? Like, I don't know a lot of this stuff. I have experience on offense, but mostly not in college. But at the end of the meeting, he's able to regurgitate all that information. He takes it, he processes it, spits it back out at Scotty Montgomery. Then he comes for the top 30 visit, and Vaki's like, throws down this folder after watching all of the Lions tape, knows 80% of the scheme, knows all the stuff just before they even meet, and Scotty Montgomery's blown away. He's like, I wanted to tell my kids this, like, this is how you come prepared for an interview. He's Scotty Montgomery's referencing plays, and Vaki's like, oh yeah, that's the one you guys did at the Raiders game, right? He's like, that sort of recall, that sort of like, I guess I don't devotion to the craft is why I think they saw, like, okay, we see what this guy can do without any of this foundation. And we now see that he is willing to build upon that foundation and do whatever it takes. And so, like, just that mentality screams Dan Campbell, screams a guy that I can mold into clay, which I'm sure is something Scotty Montgomery is very excited about. And throw on top of that, he's already going to be a day one 4-phase special teamer. That's a very valuable position on the roster. And I'm not saying like he's going to come in and, take David Montgomery's job or, even get 5-10, carries a game. I don't think any of that is going to happen right away. But down the line, I think, he'll definitely take Craig Reynolds' job soon, if not this year. I do think there's a very good chance the Lions keep 4 running backs this year, because as of right now, they don't even have a fullback position. Maybe that's something that they invest in down the line, but that creates an opportunity to keep an extra running back. And I think some people would say that maybe the new kickoff rule favors guys like running backs, their speed, their short area quickness, things like that. So, I'm not ready to declare a winner for RB3 yet, but I will say, like, that is eventually going to be Vaki's job, and maybe he becomes a Thunder to Jahmyr Gibbs Lightning down the road. But I think for now he's a roster lock for sure. And I am excited to see where it goes in terms of his contributions on offense, because the other aspect of this that I've really come away impressed with was his receiving ability. And, he's a former slot receiver in high school. And to me, like, he's such a natural catcher so far. I've seen him catch swing passes. I've seen him catch, basically everything you could expect out of the backfield. Now, we know Jahmyr Gibbs might be getting a little bit from the slot action, or at least they're going to try to work on that. But from the backfield, it seems like Vaki can pretty much do anything in terms of the passing game outside of what I think is going to be a big hurdle for him early on, and probably why they're not going to put him out there too much on offense, and that's pass protection, right? That is something that comes late for all running backs, even ones that, carry the ball 400 times in college. Pass protection is something that they don't ask of college running backs very often. And for a guy who's still learning all the fundamentals of the position, I think that's one of the things that's going to come last and probably prevent him from being on the field too much.
I'm glad that I had you on to back me on this feeling, because I've been talking very confidently about Vaki in a way where it's like, oh no, it's a full blown conclusion. But it's good to know that, again, some of the feelings that I have, and just again reading tea leaves on the Lions going out and getting a player like this, and somebody that is so versatile, and then to have the background of understanding and knowing that, no, he's also just he's mentally there, right? Like obviously he has the football ability, but he has the character and the makeup to go out there and be fully committed to learning a new position. It's something that's really exciting, and I'm right there with you. I don't know if he'll ever become, he'll hurdle a David Montgomery to take away some carries from him or to take carries away from Job, but having him out there for special teams in every phase of that is a huge bonus. And again, just somebody that is explosive enough to where, again, if you did give him 2 or 3 carries a game, again, just to spell Ja or David Montgomery on a longer drive, like, he's capable of doing that. So that's something that's, once again, really exciting to kind of see and hear coming out of these early OTAs.
Yeah, and maybe just maybe we'll get 2 running backs out there at the same time, like we've been promised for the past decade,
right? I was gonna say for the past, I was gonna say like for the past decade, we've been waiting to see 2 running back sets. One thing that we talked about a lot last week was JMO, right? And we talked. Yeah. Obviously, there's so much attention that's focused on him going into his 3rd year as well, and people really kind of, whether right or wrong, putting a huge onus on him to have a breakout year. But at this point in time, like, I think we've heard enough from whether it's Dan Campbell, whether it's JMO himself, whether it's you, like, he's trending in the right direction early on in this offseason process. There's no point in asking about St. Brown, because at this point in time, asking how St. Brown's doing in OTAs is like asking, is the grass still green? Like, right. There are certain things that are just a given. But when you look at these receiving options, and I'm including tight ends into this as well, has there been anybody that's kind of stood out that's like, okay, like, maybe the Lions have a little more depth here than some people think? Because I do think there are some questions about that wide receiver or pass catching depth.
Yeah, I'd say honestly, amongst the guys that are largely considered in the top half of the depth chart, I'm still kind of waiting for that guy to emerge. Obviously, Antoine Green missed the most recent practice, and I think he's a guy that a lot of people are interested in, and he's a guy that Brad Holmes has even said, we saw a lot of a lot of production behind the scenes, right? We saw a lot of improvement behind the scenes, but obviously that never translated to the field because the Lions had the guys who they had. I would say Donovan Peoples-Jones is another guy that's at the top of that list that I haven't really seen much of in the positive or negative. He's just, again, like, I think we're early in this building process in terms of building that rapport with Jared Goff. He's a guy that, was mostly taking second team reps at the end of last year. Same with Antoine Green, right? Guys that haven't really built in all of that with Jared Goff. So I haven't seen that necessarily develop with the first team. Now you go over to the second team and maybe a little bit deeper on the depth chart, and a guy like Doris Fountain is a guy who, to me, like, he's just all over the field for whatever reason, and sometimes it's not good things. Sometimes he's dropping passes, sometimes he's just leaping in the air and missing a catch, but he seems to, for whatever reason, kind of be Hendon Hooker's favorite target so far. And so that probably means he's doing something right. He's getting open, at least. I think the chemistry between those two is still kind of getting worked out. And if you haven't already, I'm sure most people have read things about Hendon Hooker's accuracy being a little bit of an issue. So that makes it tough to evaluate wide receivers when the ball isn't where it's supposed to be. But he's a guy that I just kind of have a little bit of an extra eye on because, again, like, he's getting a lot of targets. And if you're getting a lot of targets, there's at least a level of trust, even if maybe the chemistry isn't there 100%. And then maybe my long shot, I don't necessarily think this guy's going to make the team or anything, but is certainly a guy that I think could make the practice squad. And maybe if injuries hit the position hard, is a guy you might see on game day once or twice is Caden Davis, the guy who tried out in rookie minicamp, made the team, got signed after that. And to me, he's just made one big play after the other, seemingly in every single practice. He ended practice with one of the bigger plays of the day, a 7-on-7 deep ball down the sideline, and it's nothing flashy, right? It's not 5 steps away from the nearest defender or anything like that. It's just you're making a good contested catch on a deep ball, which is something that, like, that's Josh Reynolds. That is what Josh Reynolds did. And so you look at Caden Davis, 6'1" at $193, kind of the same body type as Josh Reynolds, and so, like, that's what I think Lions fans are looking for. Who's going to be the new Josh Reynolds out there? And not saying Caden Davis is suddenly going to be that guy, but he's a guy that clearly impressed in rookie minicamp over the weekend. So there's a level of trust or belief in the coaching staff. And to me, in both OTA practices that I've seen, he's made a couple plays out there. And so Rep went to second and third team, so always keep that in mind. But as a guy, if you're looking for a dark horse candidate to potentially make this roster, to at least make the practice squad. I think he's a guy to just keep an eye on. Like to me, he's one of those guys that might have like 200 yards in the preseason, all in the third and fourth quarter.
Right. That could be potentially this offseason's Tom Kennedy in that
exactly.
sense.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you this question, and I kind of already know the answer, but has there been any big takeaways when it comes down to the likes of Gio Manu or even Christian Mahogany? Obviously, the Lions invested some youth in that offensive line that already has a very solid foundation with their veteran presence there. But they did get some young guys that are a little raw in some respects when looking at Manu. And then obviously Christian Mahogany was somebody that a lot of draft experts expect to go higher, but actually ended up falling a bit. So anything that you've had or seen from either of those guys?
No, I mean, not really. I do want to take the approach of, offensive line play is really, really tough to evaluate when the pads aren't on. The main thing I tend to notice with offensive line is just like, where are they playing these guys? And to me, the fact that Giovanni Manu is continuing to rep at left tackle is very interesting to me, right? It seems to me like they think that's where his long-term future could be. And if that's where his long-term future can be, what does that mean for Taylor Decker? Does it mean they're not going to give him a contract extension this year? Does it mean when they do give him a contract extension, it's just going to be for 1 or 2 years, and then Manu takes over in year 3 of his rookie contract, year 4 of his rookie contract? It's probably far too early to be talking about those long-term discussions, and I'm sure the Lions don't know the answer to some of those questions yet. I would hope they don't yet. I would hope they're not making any sort of rash decisions this early in the process, but that's clearly where their mind is at, right? This is their future left tackle. And so that to me is interesting. With Mahogany, there's nothing I can really draw. Like he wasn't there on Thursday's practice. So if that's the case, I guess, hopefully it's not an injury. Obviously that's a little bit of a concern with him given his history, but it's far too early for me to make any judgments about their level of play or how quickly they're taking things on at the NFL level, because on the other side of the coin is like they're going up against second and third string guys themselves who might not be starters, so you don't want to jump to conclusions if they're being too they're dominating these guys that might not make the team, or if they're struggling against guys that might not make the team, maybe that means a little bit something to you. But again, really, really early in the process, and for a guy like Manu, there's going to be a lot of stumbles along the way, and we got to remember not to make too quick of a judgment there because he is such a raw prospect.
100%. And like I said, I kind of had a feeling that would be the answer because that's generally the mindset that I take. But again, whenever you get an injection of youth into a very specific position, people are going to start asking, and they're going to be curious.
Sure.
So for anybody,
it's a fascinating pick, right? Like,
right. I mean, I think both were right. I mean, getting a mammoth of a man in Manu, and then getting Mahogany again, someone that was thought to be again more highly sought after than he actually was. So I love the fact that the Lions even went that direction of again getting that injection of youth. But with that said, Jeremy, like I'm not going to hold you up any longer. We have so many more weeks left until we finally get to training camp, and like you said, that's when things are really going to ramp up. That's when I think we'll get even more insight, and the observations become a little more, not that they explain everything, but I think we get a better idea of what this team is going to look like once they're in pads, once they're able to really start implementing game plan and scheme. That's when things really start to take form.
Yeah, no question. And next week will be a little bit of fun too, because we'll get 3 sessions for mandatory minicamp. We'll see some players that we haven't seen so far that are probably either out doing their veteran owned thing or were absent for other reasons. So it'll be a little bit more substance, but all the things you just said are true too. It's not the same thing as having pads on, but it'll just be a little bit of an extra taste and more of a sample size with some of these other guys that have made plays here and there.
100%. So, like always, I appreciate you taking the time to come on and to definitely talk through OTAs. If you guys have not had a chance to read Jeremy's latest article on the second OTAs practice that he was able to attend, I definitely encourage you to definitely go read that, because like he even kind of teased, there's a really good piece in there, good chunk in there about Hendon Hooker that I think is very insightful. Not to mention some things about Aiden Hutchinson. Just again, even if you're into special teams, there's a little bit of a special teams update because from what it sounds like, Michael Badgley did not have the best of days. But if you want to get a better insight into that, definitely go check out Jeremy's article over on the Pride of Detroit website. And if you want to continue to just stay tuned to any more content that we have over here on the YouTube channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. That way you can be notified every time we upload a new art or a new video. Also, be sure to smash that like button because all of those things really help out the YouTube channel as we try to get more and more people to watch our content. So, with all that
bunch of good stuff over here. Bunch of good stuff. Don't miss out on it.
There's a potentially left field video coming pretty soon.
Oh,
that Morgan and I did. That is,
I like this. I like this tease.
It is very left field. It is very much like we're in the off season, and Morgan and I were like, this would be fun, and so we did it.
There you go.
So stay tuned for the YouTube channel to be able to catch that. But like always, I'm Miko. He's Jeremy. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch, and we will catch you guys in the next one.